you all for coming. First of all, we appreciate you being here tonight. As you probably have heard, Amanda, who's usually our MC for the evening, has a little bit of laryngitis, so she's going to stand to the side a little bit, and she has not been told me that I will be doing this tonight, so bear with me as I work through it. We just handed this earlier today, so
you're welcome.
So, welcome. Tonight we're going to be talking about some grand voyages, world voyages, transatlantic voyages, some really nice trips with 3 great companies tonight. But before we do that, I would like to just introduce all of us here. My name is Debbie. I work with Roseborough Travel. I've been there for about 2 years. Yeah, about 2 years now in the office. And a year prior to that as an outside agent. And here I am. I work in the office answering phones every once in a while and helping everybody with their travel plans. Of course, Amanda over here are one of our wonderful owners in the business, and her partner in crime, Tiffany, or her, wait a minute, your work wife, as you call her. Yes, your work wife. So both off to the side. We have Alyssa in the back, who has been handing out drinks tonight. She answers the phone for everybody when they call, one of the first people that answers. Rose is not here this afternoon. She's back at the office still working. We have Brittany here behind the camera. She's the one that's doing all the emails and social media and everything. She's our voice outside of the office, or getting our voice outside of the office. And Bretta is in England right now. She went home for a visit, so she'll be back.
She's in the air right now.
Is she in the air right now?
So,
okay, yeah, she's in the air, so
yeah.
Good for her.
And Miss Sarah.
Oh, Miss Sarah. Yes, hi Sarah. I thought it was...
I'm in new outside sales. It's only been about 3 months, so it's nice to meet you guys. My name's Sarah.
So Sarah. So now that we've introduced Roseborough here, I think we can get started with our introductions of all of our wonderful panelists that we have here with us today. We have Lori from Holland, America. We have John from Silversea and Ted from Cunard and Princess. And I'm going to let them say a little bit about themselves and give them a couple minutes to talk about who they are and what they do.
Well, good afternoon. Let me start by thanking you all for, especially on such an unprecedented time and travel, for turning out for the event. And thrilled myself to be able to come out in support of Roseborough Travel. I've been with Holland America Line for 23 years. I have been in travel for 33 years. So I'm very fond of the industry and know that it will be around for many times after me. So I'm grateful to be here this evening to talk about both Holland America Line and Seabourn. That's only 30 years young to cruising, and really proud of both the brands that I represent this evening. So thank you for having me.
Welcome.
John.
I'm like,
Yeah,
I can't see what's behind
Why not?
I'm John Wilson. I'm the area sales director for North Florida, which actually starts in South Florida. It's just a little mapping area. But I beat Lori by 3 years. I'm in the business for 36 years. I've been with Silversea for 15, going on 16, and I was actually with Cunard Line for 20 years before that. And I started when I was 3. But, it was actually a college internship, and I said, oh, if you work 3 months, you get a free cruise. Well, 36 years later, so it just started. But it's a great place to be. I mean, these are very trying times. We know that. But this too shall pass, and we'll move on from that. And I look forward to telling you all about Silversea. Thank you.
And my name's Ted Knight. I'm with Princess and Cunard. I guess the poster child for coronavirus, which we'll talk about in a second. So I'm very happy to be here, believe me. So my wife, who's sitting in the back room, we're on our way home from vacation. We haven't even been home yet. So we've been out and about and around the state and all over the place. So happy to be here. We're going to talk a little bit about transatlantics. We're going to talk about some world cruises. We're going to talk about some very unique destinations and ways to get there. So we're going to discuss all those things tonight.
Thank you. So, while we're on that topic, the elephant in the room, as we have called it, We would like to hear a little bit more about what we're experiencing and what's happening with each of the lines as it relates to coronavirus, because I'm sure everybody here, that's probably the first question that they have. And we'll let Ted go last.
Well, no, I offered to volunteer to start it, yeah.
Oh, okay, well, then Ted, I will let you
Because
start.
I think it's important that we see a whole picture, so that we understand everything. Princess has been exempt from a lot of problems in different parts of the world because we have such a large presence around the world. We cover 7 continents, 375 ports of call. We are literally all over the world. So when there was issues in Europe, our ships were in Asia. When there was issues in Africa, they were in Asia and Australia. We have ships based in Asia, ships based in Australia. So we've had a very strong presence in the Far East for a long time because our original owner prior to Corp was P&O, and P&O was a worldwide shipping company with dramatic access to both Asia and South Pacific. So we've had a very large presence there. And as this whole thing started to come out of China and started to kind of grow across the Asian, nobody really knew what it was. But we were caught in the headlights of it. I mean, just no two ways about it. And not only were we caught in the fact that it affected China, but then it started to affect Japan, which is most of the connecting cities to get to China. And then when Hong Kong went down, well, guess where 99% of people connect to get to Australia? They connect to either Japan or Hong Kong. So it was just kind of a snowballing effect. And for us that has such a major presence in Asia, it really hit us hard. And that's why I'm sadly saying we've become kind of a poster child. So, but it's important to understand that we've been working with the CDC and the respective governments since day one. And while it's been very difficult, and we've unfortunately have had to cancel cruises. One was canceled last weekend for the most unbelievable reason in the world. We had a person who came off of one of the ships, went through quarantine, was cleared by CDC, came to South Florida, boarded another ship, and the CDC person in Fort Lauderdale said the ship was quarantined. The ship can't go because he was on the Grand Princess. Although he had already been through protocol and he had already been cleared, he'd been cleared twice. The fact that so we ended up again unfortunately affecting 2,600 people's vacations the day of. So as John mentioned, we will get through this. We're trying to be as fair as we can. Everybody's getting 100% back, 100% future cruise credit. Those who are affected in the future, we're allowing them to cancel for no reason, get a future cruise credit. If they're going shortly, they get 100% of money back, or they get an FCC. So we understand, we got it, we're working on it. And we're also working with CDC to have better control over certain things and get testing done on a 24-hour basis instead of a 2-week basis. So I say, as Princess has been the poster child for this, that everybody in the government, the companies and all, they're on top of this and trying to get more done quickly so that we can get through this and move on to a prosperous summer.
Thank you, Ted. And I do have to say, a lot of the stuff that I have seen just through Facebook, different social medias, that people are very appreciative of how Princess has come out and been forthcoming with information and how they handle the situation. So we appreciate that too. Who would like to go next? John or Lori? John?
Well, at Silversea, we've had to change some itineraries naturally. We've had to cancel some cruises as well. We've relaxed our cancellation penalties, basically to give our clients choices in the form of future cruise credits or full cash refunds, depending upon when you're sailing. From June 1 through December 31, we've actually changed our cancellation penalty that as long as you cancel 30 plus days out, you get a full refund, cash refund. So it's not a future cruise credit. And this goes all the way through December. So you could actually book and relieve your fears that you won't get your money back. You will get a full cash refund. So we have done that. We are changing where the ships go. If there's an issue, we are changing the itineraries. That is one great thing about a ship, is they move. And oh, that's bad, you can go somewhere else. And that's what we're doing.
And Holland America is still trying to figure out what they're doing. We seem to be in a fluid situation with trying to figure out what our sister brands are doing. and trying to do future cruise credits, trying to keep everybody satisfied, trying to protect our partnerships. And so tomorrow we're doing actually a town hall with our partners. So again, trying to keep everyone traveling, trying to refund where it makes sense, trying to keep everyone traveling, so trying to make everyone happy. So again, trying to be as fair as we can and not hurt anyone in the process. So Ted articulated everything very well on Corona. One of the things too, it wasn't that long ago, since we all have been around for quite a while, that we used to talk in our presentations at length about medical at sea. So I think you're going to see that come back. Know before you go, what we do on board, how we keep healthy. So I think we all just got on with how exciting it was to travel and forgot about the simplicity. So I think you'll see us amp up on the practical and get back to some of the basics. And I think in the process, probably some of our viruses got very strong because we did too. So some of that terminology will amp up as well. Yes, sir.
I have a couple of cruises booked this summer, June and September, and they're North Europe and Baltic. And it looks like it's primarily China, Japan right now. Italy, yes. So is that what's happening? Are you closing the cruising down over there in Asia now, or how's
Well,
Europe looking?
In June and September too, I was about to ask that same question. What months are you looking at?
I haven't had a directive. Asia's been addressed. I know that we were, embracing Asia and fully refunding and trying to do everything we could around Asia. Italy, since Italy was just specifically mentioned, we're all responding to Italy, but the full Europe season hasn't been addressed. So I'm waiting, much like you are as a partner, to what we're doing to the rest of Italy. Like I said, it's such a fluid situation that as soon as we hear, it's so sad, as soon as we hear what governments are doing, we hear it and then everyone is responding around that. So that's kind of, now that it's been actually called a pandemic, now all the governments are able to do what they're going to do. So we have to wait to see how everyone's going to respond to that so that our companies can respond to that. And so that's how it unfortunately is. But we are trying to do everything that we can. We're all businesses, so we really want to keep everyone intact so that you'll keep your money there to do something future. That's what we're trying to do. If you don't want to do that, then we're trying to, what can we do that you want to do for plan B? So those are kind of all of the thought processes that are in place. If you don't want to do that for 2020, then maybe would you want to do that for 2021, and so on. So those are kind of how you think that through, and then how do you do that across? How many ships do you have, Ted? And I have a bunch of ships, and how many ships do you have? And then you do that. It's really a complex matter, but we are trying to make everyone happy through that process.
Right,
If I could share with that also, I think it's important that again, look kind of a bigger picture here. So we know Italy's going to have issues, right? So other countries in Europe, especially in the European Union, talking to each other, are going to be very protective of their borders and access and all these things. There's a lot going on. We were just talking about this earlier ourselves. John read an article and he shared it with us earlier about some things that the coronavirus may not be able to survive, and there was a list of things. We don't know. We honestly don't know at this point because it's so new. There has not been an issue in Northern Europe. Scandinavia, Russia is one of our strongest markets that we have, that Princess has, because you spend 2 full days in St. Petersburg without a Russian visa. So it is absolutely always full at 100%. So we're hoping that there's more learned about this virus so that we can be more proactive in what we do. So the countries are behind it. The countries are making sure that access to the cruise terminals or federal buildings is controlled. They're guarding who comes in. So there's a lot to this, and it's so early But generally looking now, hopefully the little wizards say, you know, it can't do this, it can't do this, it can't do this, and we should know more within 30 days.
Hopefully, I won't have to cancel them, that's my hope, but I guess when it comes up to like, what, 30 days before June, I gotta make a decision, is that what you think?
Who are you on, Holland?
That one is, I don't think either one, Norwegian, but, and then Princess.
You need to check with them, because everybody's got different policies.
Everybody has their own policies, so you have to check.
Everybody's got their own policy.
But
I will be very surprised if we have issues in Northern Europe. I'll just say that.
from the time frame, all of the cruise lines seem to be concerned about now until May 31st.
Yeah.
The
60
cruise line
days.
seems,
Yeah.
60 days. We're hoping that within the next 60, we're hoping actually within the next 30 days, we'll have more answers than we have today. We'll have more scientific facts on what it can and can't survive. We'll have more ideas on what sets it apart on hard surfaces compared to soft surfaces. We're hoping that we know a lot more at this time, you know, but to be fair to everybody who plans for their vacation, you know, we're giving everybody 60 days, you know, so to the end of May, you get this, after that, you get that. So just keep in mind, you know, look at the policy of the company involved with it, because not all policies are the same.
So I think it's fair to say that there's just a lot happening, of course, we know that.
It's
Things
very
are
fluid.
changing
I
every
mean,
day.
it is very
It is.
fluid right now.
And we aren't, one nice thing too, I know, we aren't all the same company, but we do tend to look at what each other is
Oh,
doing.
100%.
And we are trying to be a little uniform, because we all want to look good. This is one time where we really want to have a good neighbor policy. So that's a really good thing.
We're traveling in May, middle of May, to Russia, and so I'm wondering if you could describe, my concern is quarantine more than anything. What specifically was it like for those people that were quarantined? What was their life like? I mean, were they in their room?
Oh gee, I guess this is mine too.
Ted's my brother, since we're part of the same corporate structure. I know a little bit about that.
It was tough. Okay, it was not very comfortable. But we need to look at different scenarios, because it's important to understand. All right. First off, we were very lucky that the diamond situation happened in Japan, because we had the Japanese bureau there and everything. And so, but that was the early stages of the virus, and everybody was still learning what the virus is, much less how to handle it and so forth. So in the early stages of the Diamond Princess, you had each place had like an hour and a half a day out in the sunshine that they could walk around and get some exercise, and then they would quarantine in their cabin for the rest of the day. Inside people, you got to take, you know, I feel so bad for them, you know. Now on the Grand Princess, they're all quarantined. They can't go anywhere. If you were if you had, if you showed the virus, then they wouldn't let you out of your cabin. Otherwise, people could get out a little bit. Balcony cabins could walk out on their balconies, look around, take fresh air, you know, leave the door open.
Were they moving around at that time, or they were?
On the Diamond Princess, they were allowed to move around an hour and a half a day.
I mean, the ship, was the ship moving?
No,
at
the
all?
ship,
Ship was staying.
that was interesting, because there's two sides to that. When it first happened, Japan would not let them dock. So they basically were out in like a harbor. They had to go out to sea to refresh their water and to get rid of the gray water. So they had to go out to take in water and then to get rid of the gray water and go out to international waters. So, because Japan would not let them dock. So they're in and out, in and out. Now supplies, we had to go out of the country to resupply, because Japan wouldn't let us dock, Japan wouldn't let us dock. Eventually supplies were provided to the ship. Eventually the ship came ashore, and eventually they were at dock, okay? But again, this was the very first 2 weeks of the worldwide epidemic of the virus,
So
okay?
food was brought to each cabin?
So food was brought to each cabin 3 times a day. Bandwidth was increased to get Skype with their family. So we added, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of movies and TV. We increased the bandwidth over 4 times so that they could pull basically anything they wanted to. Every attempt was made to make them comfortable. The number of letters and emails that we got from people that were on the Diamond are amazing. I mean, they stack high. They're very appreciative. The crew went through their own hell. And after everybody got off, then they went through quarantine. The captain was the last person off the ship, and he just got off a couple days ago. He went through his own quarantine. So the Diamond was the very first of everything. So now that we had a ship floating around in San Francisco Harbor that was not allowed to land until she was sent to Oakland, that was just sheer panic in my opinion. But what's going to happen with those people? The plan is for U.S. citizens will be sent to certain Army bases for quarantine and barracks. All internationals will be repatriated back to their country, of which we have to charter the airplane to send them there. Okay. So that's all being done now. For some reason, the CDC in California is not allowing everybody off the ship at the same time. It is staged. It is a staged disembarkation. So some will get off today, some will get off tomorrow, some will get off the next day. So, you know, the more we get control of this, the more we understand the virus. One of the biggest things that we've been able to do now is talk to CDC into advanced testing. Because before it was 2 weeks. When the Diamond Princess was in Japan, it was 2 weeks. You waited 2 weeks to get a response. So now they're, you know, so it's ongoing. I truly don't think we're going to have problems in Northern Europe. I think that, and hopefully parts of Alaska are going to be some of the safest places to see the summer. Med could be a different conversation.
Thank you, everybody, for that. Yes.
Question. We're going to be going on a cruise. We're supposed to be leaving on Sunday and flying to Dubai. And it's not your cruise lines, but it's Norwegian. We've been on all your cruise lines before. And my main concern is we have back-to-back cruises. We get into Rome on the 9th of April. Are we going to be able to get into Rome? And then we have a back-to-back cruise that's going to leave Rome again and come back on the 19th. Are we going to be able to fly home?
I know the answer to that if you were on Princess, but I can't tell you what's going to be for NCL. We haven't taken Rome off the schedule. And we've had to, we are finding really cool cities in Europe to finish now that we're having to fly people home. Do you know?
Through May, you're taking Rome off through May? Is that right?
I'm sorry?
How long? Are you going out till May 31st?
We're going out to the end of May. In fact, I'm not too sure it's not going to be for the whole summer because there are issues with longshoremen's contracts, government contracts. You may not just be able to say, hey, for the next 4 weeks, I'm not going to come see you.
Right.
You've got to go sign a long-term. If you think about the logistics, you've got to move this city of operation, including food, oil, gas, everything has to be moved to this country, right? So it's not economically feasible to move this entire city over to here for 3 or 4 weeks when there may be issues down the road with airport access to here. So the logistics of this are unbelievable. They're just something that we have to work out. So Princess, as far as we know, most of our stops in Rome are being discontinued, and we're now going into other cities. My wife and I were looking over today. We looked at the city and we had to find it on the map, and which means we're going to be doing charter air in and out of those cities. So it's still too early. It's still too early.
So we went on Princess Cruise, matter of fact, and one of the major cases on like that had emergency appendectomy. So the whole cruise was delayed. And Princess was wonderful. They rerouted everybody and so on. We got an extra day at sea. But I don't want to get on 2 weeks at sea.
I have one last question to finish this off, and it's actually for Lori. We have a group going on Holland, America, round trip, Rome, Czechoslovakia, in June. I know that you guys are not changing anything yet, but at the point that if you change anything, you as Holland America will most likely change round trip ports of call and give each of the clients a similar opportunity that they have right now to cancel, rebook, or stay on based on the new criteria, correct?
Correct.
Also, yes. Good.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to.
Okay.
Thank you again, everybody. I know we spent a little bit of time on that. Yes.
What about the air conditioning system on these ships? Does it shoot through the whole ship? Or what is it exactly?
Well, coronavirus is actually comes from touch. Everybody thinks it's airborne, but now I'm not an expert, but it's really people walking around with masks. That's really not doing anything. It's touch. You're much better off with plastic gloves, but it's not. It's basically when somebody talks to you and a droplet will fall on something. They're not sure how long it lives, but if it hits you directly, that's where it's coming from. It's not coming from through the ducts, as far as we know yet.
Yeah, it's definitely not airborne. Scientists have said that's definitely not airborne. It's spittle, it's wiping your face. We had a situation, coronavirus, what we're talking about now, but norovirus is another thing. That she went to Anchorage. This one lady had the flu on an American Airlines flight. And every time she walked back to the bathroom, which was frequently because she was ill, she's of course touching the top of the seats.
Right.
So they came back and were able to correlate back to her. 500 people got sick because of that one lady. She went to the hotel in Anchorage on the handrails, buttons in the elevator, So this is like John says, it's all, keep your hands clean and all, and
That's the most important.
This is actually a little bit easier to control, I think, than norovirus.
It's much more deadly.
Just,
It's 10 times deadly per age group.
yes.
I might make one comment that might be a suggestion. With the recent reports, to get out ahead of this in a PR standpoint, if you could advertise that your crew is being checked each time, because I think the crew could be more of a problem than actually people coming on board.
The crew are the cleanest people in the world right now.
Well, I don't think there's wrong. I'm just saying to prevent the assumption of that.
Right.
If they would say, we're testing our crew every trip or something.
We've actually talked about PR. We had a big town hall today. Ted wasn't able to be on. It was a big sister brand call. And why you haven't seen my cruise line PR, because there's been so much cruise line discussion. And it's just been suggested that the timing of it hasn't been appropriate. So you know that. It's been discussed. Wouldn't it be great if a cruise line spokesperson or somebody talk about this from a respected cruise line person, talking head somebody, please say something from travel. And that's been, so to your point, I'll definitely make the note that that would be something.
Because I think
Yeah.
19 out of the 21 were crew, and you go like,
Yeah.
And who's bringing my food?
So we spent a lot of time on the coronavirus. That's not why we weren't here for the corona. And we'd like to get on to some really great other topics and why we brought everybody here today. But thank you for the information. We know it's important and everybody's worried about it. Everybody has trips planned and you really want to have that great vacation, me included. So we all want to have a nice trip, and as we had expected. So
Daddy's going on a cruise in 2 weeks.
next Saturday.
Next Saturday.
Yes, next Saturday. And I am going. I am taking my trip, so I'm prepared. And as they say on all the ships, washy-washy. So we are going to make sure to do that, and we're prepared for it. And hopefully all is well. I'm not concerned at this point with our particular trip. So, but it is great information, and thank you. We appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. Lots of good food.
So moving along, the first thing that we wanted to talk about, or we have several items we wanted to talk about tonight, and those were some of the longer voyages and some of the transatlantics and grand voyages that each of these lines have available. So we're going to start with transatlantics. So we're going to start with Ted. Just a quick question, if you could just talk to us about what is a transatlantic voyage?
Well, transatlantic voyages, a lot of it depends on the company. When it comes to Princess, we're transferring ships from North America to Europe, or Europe back to North America in the fall. When it comes to Cunard, it's a completely different experience. A transatlantic is a historic sailing. It's something that we've been doing for over 175 years on Cunard. if you think about all the history of the people who used to come over to North America back in the 30s and 40s, all the way up until airplanes were created that could fly nonstop across the ocean, they came across on a ship. Right? So Cunard, when we look at transatlantics, on the Cunard side, it's a major portion of our business here in North America. On the Queen Mary II, she's a trans-ocean ship. She's designed to cross mass oceans at a given time. She's a destination herself with talks, lectures, discussions. There's all kind of things going on. So the transatlantic on the Queen Mary II is the experience of a lifetime. Right? On the Princess side, we basically have two scheduled transatlantic times a year. One is an eastbound transatlantic going from North America over to Europe. Those always go out light. Those are probably your best bargains that you're going to find out there. They're easy for people to get to Europe on, lowest cost that you're going to see. I have a group of ladies in the villages that don't fly, so they'll take an eastbound transatlantic on somebody. They'll run around Europe. They'll do the Queen Mary II back to New York, and then they do Amtrak back to Orlando. And that gets them, last year they had 100 of the ladies do it. So this is something that they do, and they've been able to find their own niche, right? So eastbound transatlantics are great deals. Westbound transatlantics, as we bring the ships back, are very popular. You know, they come out of the Med, they come out of the North Cape, they come out of the UK. Very popular because basically Europe starts to shut down coming back in October and November. So everybody comes back to North America at that time. So they have a tendency to sell out. So eastbound on Princess anyway, great deals, ship away to get to Europe. You're working on a 23-hour day going eastbound, coming westbound, you're working on a 25-hour day. But if you're thinking about a transatlantic, think about a Queen Mary II because it's a whole different experience.
And John, with Silversea, now that we've learned a little bit about what the transatlantic is, and especially with Cunard and Princess, so what about with Silversea? What kind of experience will they have on the transatlantic? And
a lot of nice ladies and kids have that. No, but it is really different. And I've done transatlantic on Silversea. And depending on what one you do, because if you do the southern one, which is Florida over into the Med, usually into Lisbon, you'll only have 1 or 2 ports of call. But if you do a northern one, let's say from New York to London to Southampton, there you only have 4 days at sea. You basically go up through Halifax, Nova Scotia, you stop in Ireland on the way back. That's really very interesting, depending upon what you're looking for. 2 very different itineraries. One only has 4 days at sea and the other one has about 8 days at sea. But you do see a lot either way. Transatlantic, I will tell you, amongst our Venetian Society, which is our past passenger group, it is probably one of the most popular sailings we do. We have people that we call our transatlantic junkies, because that's all they do. Go back, go forth, they go over, they come back. Again, extremely popular. I will agree with Ted, I do have to agree with Ted on one thing, and that is that westbound is much, I shouldn't say much better, but it is, because you gain an hour rather than lose an hour. And that's a big difference when you're on a ship. You have longer days, 5-hour days versus 23 hours.
Nice. And then for Holland, what types of voyages can they expect with Holland? I'm sorry, with Holland and Seabourn. What kind of experiences will they have, and what kind of voyages will they expect?
So typically, you can expect out of Fort Lauderdale and the Port of Tampa, which we can thank, now that we don't call on Cuba, we now have reopened our relationship with the Port of Tampa. So we reposition the now Veendam will be sailing out of Tampa again. So even though my slide up there is showing you the Voyage of the Vikings, we have ships that we have to reposition out of Fort Lauderdale and the Port of Tampa. So seasonally, just as these 2 men have told you with their products, we also are repositioning ships out of Port Everglades and Tampa to get ships to Europe. So we do that as well for Holland America Line. But what I chose to highlight was something that we do, it's our anomaly in the summer, which is considered a transatlantic voyage, which is a 35-day round trip Voyage of the Vikings. So that's fun because you don't have to do an international flight. You can do a domestic flight out of Boston. So to be aware that there is something every year that sails out of Boston round trip. And it has a fantastic set of itinerary tied to it. Of course, you have to have 35 days. But if you do, to know to look for that. And if you don't, you can break it up into 2 segments, Boston to Amsterdam or back from Amsterdam to Boston, and it's a wonderful set of itineraries. So I just wanted to let you know that there was something. And oftentimes people will break it up to get over and spend the time in Europe and then come back on 10. So that does happen on occasion. So again, just to be aware that there can be anomalies and non-traditional transatlantics. And so that's why I threw that into my transatlantic slide for this year.
Perfect. And then, was there anything else that people should know about these cruises? So one thing that people will look at, or when I look at them myself personally, you start to think of how many sea days that you may have, you know, that sort of thing. What are some things that maybe you should consider before looking at a cruise, or some good things that would be part of taking this transatlantic?
Well, one of the things is like on our transatlantics, the lectures tend to be really over the top. And when I say that, very often we'll get former, let's say, movie stars and stuff like that. People that you know, great authors as well, that they like these type of voyages. They are extremely popular. On all of our transatlantics, we also offer bridge, if anybody's a bridge player, because we need 3 days at sea and then we'll do bridge. Bridge is very popular on Silversea. So there's a lot of, and there's different classes. There'll be culinary classes as well. So it's a lot of things you want to do, but you know, and if you don't want to do anything, the deck chairs are always available.
They go over on you, they come back on us. We have the authors, we've had Richard Dreyfuss, we have, there's a list of stars and people that go back and forth to Europe on the Queen Mary 2. There's a lot of people that don't like to fly. That's the bottom line. A lot of people don't like flying. And when you're doing a transatlantic, the ship itself becomes a destination. You don't have any stops, hopefully. So you have to keep everybody content, happy, going, and engaged the whole time. So that's when you have talks, lectures, discussions. On Queen Mary 2, we have the planetarium at sea. We have all these people that really make it interesting. We have fashion week, we have science week, we have all these things. So that it's kind of an engagement program to keep you engaged. Or, like John said, you can do absolutely nothing. But what we probably need is the engagement program to really receive very high awards, and people seem to like it. We never want to be educated, but we want to be engaged. Basically, that works.
And Seabourn's very much the same. It's a small, ultra-luxury, so it is about being pampered. So you have all those sea days coming and going. And again, it is what you're doing at sea, so you have a lot of those educational opportunities at sea. The lecture series, Who's Who that might be sailing with you, lots of spa time, lots of culinary time, opportunities to enjoy Thomas Keller's The Grill. So again, it's maybe not so much where you're going, it's all about what you're doing on a Seabourn cruise. So again, great opportunities at sea.
There was an old saying, getting there is half the fun.
That sounds good to me. Food, spas, and some entertainment, so that
Right.
sounds good to me.
It is your destination. Yeah.
Yes. So moving along with,
The only thing they
question,
didn't
sorry.
mention about transoceanic is, at least from my standpoint, since I cruise single, is the single supplements are usually much smaller, transatlantic and transpacific than they are on the regular cruises. The only exceptions are the Voyage of the Vikings, and Cunard.
thank you for adding that. Yes?
Since everybody comes back when you did, how big of a ship is the Queen Mary 2?
She is 100, and book right here, I could cheat. I want to say she's 150,000 tons. She carries roughly 3,400 passengers. So she'll handle 2,000 less than most cruise lines of same size, 3,000 less than the mega ships of the same size. Right? So the Queen Mary 2 is her design is different. She's designed to cross mass oceans. She's deep. She's a double-hulled ship. She's the last of the Mohicans. She's the last of her design. So she was designed specifically to cross mass oceans at a given time. So she rides different. Everything about her is different. She's designed to take the seas, right? So the cabins are spacious. There's more public areas because we have more public things to do to keep you busy on a 7-day crossing. So I have the statistics here. I can tell you about that.
Do people go and just come back?
They do. You know, in fact, it's kind of amazing. My wife and I, we do this up in Alaska. We go Vancouver to Anchorage, Anchorage to Vancouver. We stay on the whole time. And people do that on the transatlantics too. Some people will do 14 days. The majority of those that will do the 2 crossings originate in the UK. So they'll come over and back, right? So Cunard is very British. You're going to have 30-40% of the ship, depending on the month, it's going to be British. Then you're going to have 30-40% is going to be international, meaning North Americans are only 20-30% of the ship. So Brits have a tendency to get on a ship and stay there. You know, if the ship is going from the UK to New York to the Caribbean back, they'll stay on there the whole time. You know, that's just because, you know, they get 30 days of vacation the first year that they work. So it's a whole different thing for them. But yeah, they do. They have a tendency to stay on there longer than North Americans.
Perfect, thank you. So moving along, we're going to talk about some grand voyages and some of the differences that we have there. So maybe, Lori, did you want to talk about a grand voyage and what a grand voyage is?
Oh, sure. So usually, well, not usually, always, Holland America Line's been doing grand voyages for a very long time. So with that, we typically cherry pick the best of the best across our fleet and put those crew on the ship that's appointed the Grand World Voyage ship. So that is the Amsterdam for the last many years. So the Amsterdam is one of our flagships that does a Grand World Voyage. And then, so that means a lot in the area of service. And the ship is just beautiful. She's around 60,000 gross tons and carries roughly 1,200 people. And so there's wonderful enrichment. The activities are really befitting a Grand World Voyage. And what we do on that ship is mirroring the destination. So whatever, you know, we're hopefully visiting most of, if not all, 7 continents. Of course, our world is constantly changing. So typically it's hostilities that denote what we're doing, not a coronavirus. But whatever is happening in the world, you know, we're riding the deployment for that Grand World Voyage. And we try to emulate what's happening on our calendar as well. So we celebrate Mardi Gras on the ship. We celebrate certain holidays that are happening. So we're having all of that go on the ship between January and the end of April, or if we have an extra long Grand World Voyage until that first week of May. So it could be, you know, around a 128-day Grand World Voyage. There's lots of neat things that we do. We commemorate pillow gifts at night, and we have a Grand World table. Often you'll have the chance to have dinner with the master and different uniformed staff. Of course, you get to know your crew very well because you're living on the ship for 4 months. So it is a community at sea. A lot goes on. Special people come and go to entertain you, so it can be a lot of fun. And then there's amenities. Certainly, when you're booking a Grand World Voyage, you would expect that you would have some give in the amenity world, and you do. So there are, from an ocean view up, some very lucrative amenities that go with the purchase of a Grand World Voyage. And if you book and pay in full by a certain date, you also get a discount of 3% off your Grand World Voyage. So there's all kinds of interesting things that are tied to that. And you might think that it costs a rather substantial amount to go on a Grand World Voyage, but it costs about $25,000 in that. But when you start calculating the value of that for 128 days, you would be amazed to find how much value there is in being away from home for 4 months. So just on your food, okay. You know, the staff at Roseborough can do those calculations for you and show you the value of buying the Grand World Voyage. You would think it would be a once-in-a-lifetime thing, but believe it or not, there are multiple Grand World Voyage guests. It's amazing because we don't duplicate the itineraries of Grand World Voyage. They change up. So anyways, we do make them extra special, and we have been doing them for a very long time. So, yes, ma'am.
Does it go on Fort Lauderdale?
And thank you, ma'am. Yes, you leave from Fort Lauderdale. Goodness, I almost thank you for asking that. Say, and you return to Fort Lauderdale. Isn't that wonderful for those of us who live in Florida? That's the best part. You know, the ship is right, you know, just a few hours from here and takes us to the world, right? Takes us to see the world. We don't have to do a whole lot but get ourselves to Fort Lauderdale.
One of the questions that people usually ask is how do you pack for a 128-day cruise? So maybe thinking about, you know, you're talking about amenities and things, so are there any inclusions to include, like any laundry services or anything like that on board? Or can you talk about some of the other things that maybe you would possibly get on a world voyage to be included in your price?
Well, if you've been on Holland America before and you're a mariner, and you know, then there could be some extra perks in that as well. But there's a nice note before you go document that can help as well. And certainly, I don't know what kind of packer you are for 128 days. I don't know. I would be challenged by that. I would. I don't know that I would do you any good deed on the packing for 128 days. I'm an overpacker,
so I'm sure it would have to go with me.
Yes, but I think the part of the amenity piece, when you see the amount of amenities that go with a Grand World Voyage purchase, that would certainly help towards the buy of laundry services. But anyways.
Thank you.
Yeah.
John, I'll let you talk about Silversea.
Okay, well, Silversea, we have Grand Voyages and then World Cruise Voyages as well. Grand Voyages generally are from 50 to 65, 70-day range, and then the World Cruise can go from anywhere from 141 to 167 days, depending upon where you are going. I just want to see what's left of I'm looking for that. Anyway, with the amenities on board, like if it's a Grand Voyage and a World Cruise, there are two different items on us. A Grand Voyage, again, they're shorter cruises. One of the things that does mirror Grand Voyages as well as World Cruise Voyages, there is a gala before you board the ship where you're going. And like this year for the World Cruise, it was at the Breakers in Palm Beach. All the full cruise guests would be invited to that, and then they would get on the ship the next day. And there are different amenities. On us, on the Grand Voyage, there will be special shore bench as well as on the World Cruise, that are exclusive to those guests that are on the full cruise. Segment guests would not be invited to those special events. And then we have World Cruise as well. World Cruise is a different animal. And it's funny, our World Cruise guests are very protective. And when I say that of the ship and the crew, we tried to change the ship about 8 years ago. We got humped and we had to change it back to what they wanted, because our World Cruise ship is the Silver Whisper at 382 guests. And they like an exclusive little group on board. Right now that ship is 382. There's 270 people in the full World Cruise. So percentage-wise, you're talking like 75% of full World Cruise guests. And by the way, everybody gets free laundry, so you don't have to worry about it. And now when you talk, I heard somebody mention packing before. You can see full World Cruise guests show up with one suitcase, the small ones, and then you see the ones that will show up with 15, 16 suitcases. And you do see that, but it's funny though, like on us, every cabin on Silversea is actually a suite. So just to let you know, like on the Silver Whisper standard suite is 345 square feet. It has a walk-in closet, but in the bathroom, there's a tub and a separate shower. Half the World Cruise guests, though, make that tub into another closet. Basically, they put a platform on the bottom for the shoes, and then a rack on the top, so you get a lot of extra hanging space that way. So there is a lot of different things you can do. But the World Cruise is also different. We also have a lot of choices on the World Cruise. Like in 21, the World Cruise, you're going to have in 4 ports of call. Now you choose the port. We're going to give you 20 ports of call. We're going to give you a private car and driver for the day. You choose the port. In 5 of the cities on board, 5 of the places you're going to get, again, about 20 different cities, we're going to let you choose where you want to go eat in that city. We're going to give you 30 restaurants. If you want something else, but basically 30 top restaurants in the city. We're going to have a car and driver take you to the restaurant. You're going to dine, and the bill is on us. You don't have to do a thing. It's already been prepaid. But it gives you your choice. You're not going with a group unless you want to go with a group, because that's what happens. The World Cruise becomes a big clique, by the way. So it's very cliquey. So all of a sudden, you thought you were going with 2 people, but now all of a sudden you go with 15. You ride. There's 7 different cars to drive, so everybody gets on the car driver. But it's really really a fun evening. But again, if you want to go by yourself, you can. There's a lot of choice. World Cruise is a very special thing, and probably 75% of our guests go every year. So.
And Ted, on the Grand Voyages.
What do we have with us on Grand? See, we don't know what they're showing, so we have to cheat a little bit here. All right. So, I go back to something I said earlier. 7 continents, 200 and 370 ports of call. We kind of get lost in some pretty cool places. And when we come to some Grand Voyages, typically they're going continent to continent and perhaps continuing on from there. But really, you cannot talk about a Grand Cruise without talking about a World Cruise, because a World Cruise really is the beginning of a Grand Cruise. John, bless his heart, helped build Cunard's World Cruise presence years ago. He was with Cunard. And again, we go back into history. On the Princess side of the Grand Voyages and on the World Cruises, we've only been doing worlds for about 10 years on the Princess side. Cunard's been doing World Cruises for basically as long as, I think, a century.
Started in 1921.
1921.
See, I knew that.
he's like a historian. So you see what I mean? It's a whole different thing. On the Princess side, on our World Cruise on the Princess side, about 60 to 70% of it will be elite past passengers, so they get their laundry done anyway. When you're looking at a World Cruise, it's always best to book early when they first come out. There's a reduced deposit. You're going to get more deals. You're going to get more onboard credit. You're going to get gratuities included. You're going to get laundry. You're going to get all those things. As time progresses, then things get kind of interesting, because if we sell the ship out at the full world, if we sell it up to a percentage, which is roughly 60, 70% of the world, then we open up segments. And these are the segments that I really want you to pay attention to on some of the segments. So, if you look at the top up there, our World Cruise on Princess is round trip Fort Lauderdale also, okay? What's really cool about this is people, especially experienced cruisers, are always looking for unique places to go. Out of Fort Lauderdale, through the canal, ends up in LA, and then you can actually do a Trans-Pacific. Now, here's where it gets interesting. At a certain point, we're going to stop selling the whole world, and we're going to sell segments of the World Cruises, which is also sometimes called a Grand Voyage. And typically that would be, for example, from LA to Sydney, Australia. Anything that does Trans-Pacific is very, very popular. If you leave LA, you come back down through Hawaii and then Pago on down through several stops in New Zealand, and you end up in Sydney. You fly home from Sydney. Conversely, if you're looking at it coming back, you have a ship that does this coming back Sydney to LA, it will absolutely sell out a year and a half in advance. So Trans-Pacifics are getting to be what Transatlantics were 50 years ago. Now they're more accessible. The technology is there. More ships can do them. The Princess fleet, we're going to have the Island Princess is going to do a world. She's a beautiful sized ship. Unique opportunities to book early. On the Cunard side, now Cunard's a different animal. About 15 years ago, I had a chance to go to Fort Lauderdale to watch the Queen Elizabeth II, QE2 board in Fort Lauderdale. And it was quite a sight to see. So the ship is there, and here comes the horse-drawn carriages. When people show up with horse-drawn carriages, the men are in top hats and tails. Ladies are in long dresses with white gloves. Behind them is another horse carriage with their luggage, these big old luggage things. It was a sight to see. It was an amazing thing. Almost 50% of the world cruise will be sold to people on the ship for the next year. So yeah, and once they go, they have a tendency to go again. And that's why we alter the itinerary. We do things a little bit different, but the bottom line is you book early, you get better deals. If you're a Princess Pass passenger, you book early with a reduced deposit, you sit and twiddle your thumbs because you know there may be a better deal coming down that you can convert to. That's one thing that we've always going to do. So Grand Voyages, as part of the World Voyages, are great, great deals.
And you just mentioned about them selling out. Of course, when you're on board and you're talking about they'll sell out a year and a half in advance. So when should someone start planning their world voyage if they were interested in doing that?
The stranger the cruise, the more expensive the cruise, the quicker it sells out. And that's simply because of access. You know, there are certain cruises that go around South America. There are certain cruises that go around South Africa. There are certain parts of the world, Australia, New Zealand. On our flip side, on the Australia, up to and include Hawaii, circle out of Australia, sells out a year and a half in advance. Because before, if we go back 10 years, technology didn't allow us to do these type of cruises. We didn't have the power plant strong enough to go that far. We didn't have the paint that allowed the ships to go through that fast. Technology has allowed us to go further fastest than the history of the industry. So more and more of the world are opening up to new opportunities. And the funny thing is, the more unique it is, the harder it is. You know, I bet your grand going over the top sells out every year.
The Northwest, Northeast,
yes. Because it's so exclusive and there's so few opportunities to do that.
That was going to go into the next question I had, was about where we can travel on these world voyages and what places do they get to visit. And I'd let each of you have a little bit of time to talk about the places that they can
Whose line is that?
We have, well, we can start with Laura.
Oh my goodness.
Whose line is that?
That's not fair.
Too many places.
Well, this is actually my Grand World Voyage for 2021, and it was performing outstandingly. You can see, I hope you can read all of the different places that it leaves from Fort Lauderdale and returns to. 128 days on the Amsterdam, so traveling into, hopefully in the new year, through the Suez Canal and into the Holy Lands in Asia, into Hawaii and into and through the Panama Canal and so on, back and making its way ultimately to Fort Lauderdale again. But I don't know what you want us to elaborate on.
No, so and just that's enough just to see what what types of places. Seeing it on the map, of course. Really
Yeah, it's
gives
very
a visual
visually overwhelming to look at,
Yes.
and then it's printed out in text by city, and much like Ted said, you can do segments of the Grand World Voyage. You don't have to do all 128 days because some people are looking for a certain piece of the world that they might not be able to find in regular employment. And so I'm always looking at where our world cruise is going to find that unique spot that they can't find in some part of the world that they're looking for. Yes?
On a cruise like that, 128 days, how many ports of call do you hit? You know, you could take an excursion in each port.
Well, there are many overnight stays. So while this map is just that, it's an overwhelming map of port cities. It's more, I think, fair to look at the day by day, and then there's some symbols that show you where we're doing overnights. So in some of the iconic cities where you're looking to do your touring, we tend to overnight so that you can go see and do the things that you need to access the places in the world that you would naturally want to go spend your time in. So this map really was just an illustration of a Grand World Voyage, which is why I put it out there like but back to my point of if you're looking for, a particular spot on the planet, because most of you probably are very well traveled. You may be looking for that one-off place that isn't on an itinerary, always check the world cruise. Chances are it might be embedded in a place on a Grand World Voyage map, and take, look at the segment, and that would take you where you're looking to go.
John, do you have anything else to share about the Grand or World Voyages on Silversea? It looked like you had something
Yeah,
you wanted to
this
tell
was
us,
my
so-
map right behind it. Can you go back? I just
Yeah.
want, so right behind that is this map that I'm talking to. And when you're looking in my full atlas, you'll see this page, and then there are all these little symbols that show you extended days, so you can see when you're spending more time in a port city. And that helps you in your planning, your tours and so on, so that you can understand more about how much time you have in each of those port cities. So you can do your planning to understand, how much time you have. So you can see there's plenty of symbols by some of those port cities.
Thank you. Yeah, that's an extensive list. It is kind of overwhelming.
It is. And this right behind it is Seabourn, also very, very busy, and even longer Grand World Voyage on the Sojourn. And so again, a smaller representation of a community. The Sojourn is 30,000 gross tons, carries 450 guests. So a beautiful way to see the world with a smaller community at sea. And you can see she leaves from Miami and comes back to, hers is a little bit different, Miami. Yep, Barcelona, Spain. So she leaves on the 3rd of January and then finishes her world cruise on May 24th. So I have one Grand World Voyage brochure on Seabourn, if anyone wanted to take a look at that. Because I'm a Seabourn cruiser and got one sent to my home. I might have some Seabourn guests in the room too. So again, you could do some segments of this as well. So just some ideas of the scope of what these voyages are like. And you'll be able to hear from John as well. And they just get bigger.
They just get bigger. The World Cruise is truly a unique experience, and like with Seabourn, those ships are smaller, and they're able to go to a lot of places big ships just can't go to because they are smaller. But again, it's the nature of the people on board, basically, and the crew. It becomes almost like a family. Like one thing we do on the World Cruise that we don't do any other time. We have family night every Sunday night in our Italian restaurant, which is basically serve family-style meals, and people love it because the World Cruises almost become their own family. But we have another World Cruise in 2021, which is our Expedition World Cruise. This is the first ever Expedition World Cruise, 167 days from Antarctica to the Arctic, so from one end of the world to the other end of the world. The best way to describe this is, for the most part, you won't be able to buy a t-shirt anywhere. So, there's one of the interesting statistics on this, 128 different languages will be spoken on this between all of the places you're going to. But again, if you're looking for something unique and you're very well traveled, this cruise is really, you think you've been everywhere, done that? Take a look at this. I mean, I have clients on that cruise. One agent told me, she said she thought she was everywhere in the world for the most part, and there was 52 new ports of call on this cruise that you're going to, because they're extremely remote, that you can't get to any other way. And again, you're starting in Antarctica, you're starting in the cold and ending in the cold, but that's it for the cold. The middle of it, 90% of it's warm, so I just wanted to just say that. But again, very, very unique cruise.
And what time of year is that one?
That's January as well.
January as well.
So you're on that from January until the beginning of July. But in the World Cruise, everything is basically included on the Expedition World Cruise. All the excursions are included as well, and every segment will have a theme. So it's just sort of like, one of the themes will be stargazing, because in In the South Pacific, it's so dark because you don't have big cities and so forth. So that whole segment will be stargazing, but every segment will have a different theme. So we are selling segments as well.
And Ted, you had spoken a little bit earlier about some of the places that Cunard and Princess had gone, so I think you talked a little bit about the World Cruises. Did you have a few other things to add?
No,
to that as well?
I think it's important as the three of us sit up here that basically sitting before you is you have two premium products and three luxury products, between us sitting here. And Laurie and I represent two premium products on the Princess and Holland side, to where we focus on certain parts of the world, Alaska being our biggest, Panama Canal, part-time in the Caribbean, not so much Europe, Asia, Africa, all these unique places. And then on the luxury side, here you have three companies, between Cunard and Silversea and Seabourn, that can offer so many different destinations in the world. And that's the thing. There's so many different places, so many opportunities. It's important to sit down, relax, and review things, because we all go to some really neat, cool places, right? It's just finding the one that fits best for you.
And right along that line, did you have a question?
Kind of for all of you, it started with John, and then I got with Lori, and in fact, the size of the ship and going across the ocean, and then there's only 300 and 400 people, seasickness, she's prone to.
What would make you think you would have any problem?
I was wondering, those ships are so much smaller than the Caribbean cruise ships, and I've heard of people that have gone on those and gotten sick. So that's one of my questions. And the other question is, on most of those ships, it's important to get a balcony, but when I looked at pictures of the ships, there's not as many balconies, and I don't think it would be as important to have a balcony on a world cruise. And I'd just like to hear something about those two things, seasickness.
When it comes to stability, it's really to have the ship as designed, a flat bottom versus a V-bottom. And then, excuse me, there was a plug in. But anyway,
it worked out well for
me. So with that being said, so that is designed. The ships are designed for worldwide cruising. I mean, we don't have quote-unquote Caribbean cruises because our ships have always been meant for the world. And as far as a balcony goes, that is a personal choice. But on our ships, like on the World Cruise ship, 80% of the ship is balcony. So it depends if you want to be able to go out. Most of our guests most guests, we sell top to bottom, by the way, or no matter what cruise it is. You can always find generally our bottom rate available, but the top is always sold. That is the way. And on the World Cruise, it's even more so than that. So.
And on the Seabourn ships, all of the rooms are suites. So they all have rooms with a view. So you eliminate that problem right from the start.
You bring up a really good point, and that is the ideas of cruising, because if we go back and look at statistics, only 10% of the traveling public have ever cruised. 90% of those who travel on vacation have never cruised. So I hear all the time in our travels around, well, gee, maybe I'll just take a 3-day cruise to the Bahamas and see if I like it. Well, that is absolutely the worst seas in the entire Western Hemisphere. It's crossing the Gulf Stream on a July afternoon. I can assure you, you're going to feel like you're part of the deadliest catch game. Okay? So it depends on the parts of the world and the ship design. On the Cunard side, we've got the Queen Mary 2, who's designed to cross these oceans. That's what she's designed for. She's deep, she's fast. But you look at certain destinations. For example, Alaska. Alaska would be a destination where you have to have a balcony. It doesn't matter whether it's here or here. It doesn't really matter as long as you can get out there at 11 o'clock at night and see whales breaching and eagles flying. That's the magic of Alaska. That's all part of it. So that would be a place you'd have to have a balcony. Do you need a balcony in Antarctica when you're not really going to spend a whole lot of time out there? No. But, most of them come. Funny thing, and John mentions it's absolutely true, suites always sell out first. Many suites sell out second. Club class for us, which gives them a lot of options, sells out. And then we have to sell the rest of the ship around. So it depends on where you are in the world. It depends on the ship, depends on the design of the ship, and if it was designed to cross oceans, which most of your cruises that do world cruises are. But, you know, we get into
These
certain
ships are
parts, certain part of the world, depending on where you are, that you would just really need to have a balcony. If it's a once in a lifetime event, you need to make sure you're there to enjoy the once in a lifetime.
I agree. So with everything, you know, all that we have talked about, we have to ask, everybody here is probably going to wonder, have you done some of these voyages before? Is there one that you would like to do? Is there something that's on your bucket list of all of the voyages that you offer within your minds? What would be the one thing that you would want, or what's top on your list?
For me to go is Antarctica. Okay, I've always wanted to do that, and I've been to the Arctic and I've been to the Galapagos. So I started at the top, been to the middle, now I got to go to the bottom. So, you know, but I want to do that. But I love expedition cruising because it's truly, you never know what you are going to see from minute to minute, and things change. And when I say that, I did an expedition cruise, and we were supposed to do a landing in the morning. The captain canceled the landing, and he said there was polar bears across the ice. So the ship, it's an ice-rated hull, the ship sails right through the ice, and there was a dead whale on this, which we were assured died naturally. They said in human terms it's about 125 years old, because a polar bear cannot kill a whale. But there was 3 polar bears eating this whale. Now, this was just one of those moments that you could not believe. And maybe we're like 50 feet away from this. We were still on the ship, and we were there, by the way, on our balcony. But now, we watched this for about 45 minutes, and now one of the polar bears finally gets up, and he must have been eating all day. He could barely move. His stomach was like hitting the ground. And he walked about 10 feet, and he looked back, and you knew what he was thinking. Should I take another bite or shouldn't I? But it was amazing because you were that close to it. So like, you know, when it comes to, I love expedition cruising. That's one of my favorite, but basically Antarctica is a question. But that was one of my favorite cruises, and when it comes to traditional cruising, Vietnam was another one. Vietnam is truly a special place. If you haven't been there, it's one of those places that you need to go sooner than later. Things are changing rapidly there, and it's very Americanized. We were there over Thanksgiving 2 years ago, and they had Black Friday sales. Okay, but the best way for me to put it is our guide in one of the ports said, "You've come at a good time. We're in transition." He said the best way for me to put it is my 10-year-old son prefers KFC to spring roll. So they're getting so westernized. So that would be the cruise that I've been on that I would tell everyone to go on. That's one.
We'll have a special on those starting shortly. We'll roll it back up in Japan.
Yeah.
Lori?
Well, I think my dream cruise would definitely be a Grand World Voyage. If I could get my husband to stay on a voyage for 4 months. That's asking a lot, although I think he could do it. And of course the bonus is the fact that we wouldn't have to get on an airplane at all. So that's a real selling point. And the fact that, you know, to see the world would be, involve so much in my lifetime, what's left of my lifetime. I would never be able to see the world any other way. And I just think that would be just a marvelous way to do it.
That's a great point, because how else are you going to get to see the world all at one time?
Right.
It might seem like a long time, but I bet 4 months probably would go by fairly quickly by the time you were done and you look back on it. It's a long time, but
I would never be, you know, I'm somebody that sees the world through the Smithsonian Channel. So, you know, that this is really the only way that I could see it. And really, and my other recommendation, if you've never seen it, and I'm sure that I have a very savvy audience here, my most favorite destination happens to be Alaska. It is just someplace that I love. It's so big, I could never see it all. So it's someplace I could continue to go to for the rest of my life. And I would always see someplace unique. So I'm so happy that Holland America line and Seabourn go there. So it's my favorite destination.
Thank you. And Ted?
Oh,
I already know
I
yours.
think you know very well where I'm
I think
going.
I do.
Well, okay, so let me say this. My favorite cruise is anyone that my wife is on. So, that's gonna give me dinner. Okay. Happy wife, happy life. No, for those of you who have never slept through one of my Alaska presentations, Alaska is my absolute favorite place. Been there 59 times. This summer will be 60. We're going to spend a couple weeks up there. There's no place like it. No place can you walk outside your door and never see the same thing twice, 2 days in a row, between the whales, the wildlife. There is a really cool cruise that goes from Vancouver and ends up in Japan. And that has always been kind of one of the things I would like to do. It goes into Alaska, comes over, comes down into, I think it's one stop in China, multiple stops around the Japan Islands, and then ends up in Tokyo. That's always been one of the things that I just, have always wanted to do, because it touched a lot of things. We've always wanted to go to Japan, and of course we love Alaska. We have the opportunity, Princess gives us the opportunity, when anywhere in the world we want, we choose Alaska. We'll sit down on that balcony, we'll reach inside, pick up the phone, call room service, and we just watch the wonders of the world at our very feet the entire time. So, but my ideal cruise would be the one that goes from Vancouver to Tokyo.
Thanks. Thank you for sharing all that. And then I guess one final piece before we get into any questions or additional questions would be, so as we wrap it up, if right now any specials that might be going on, happening, and any last thoughts on the World Voyages, Grand Voyages, and Transatlantics that you might be able to offer.
Well, for us, if you do book any cruise within the next 2 weeks, it's a $250 per person savings. But we do offer free air throughout the world, and business class to Europe is $6.99 per person. And once you sit in front of the bus, you never want to go back.
Lori, how about for you?
We have what's called Pack These Values right now. That's our promotional verbiage. So it has a lot of free, like the tax ad. So there's state room gratuities, reduced fares for third and fourths, onboard spending up to $300. There's another additional give if you book an Ocean View or above by March 22nd. There's a gift card value that's been put in there, given by Holland America for an additional $200. So there's, a little extra spin on things. So that's called Pack These Values. And I would just say stay tuned because we keep doing extra offers. So that's our current promotion called Pack These Values.
And just so you know, in our industry, all three of our companies, in our industries, there are three different divisions. There's operations, sales, and admin. Okay, we leave operations alone; they leave us alone. We don't have anything to do with them. And then we have sales and admin, and we hate each other. We think they're a bunch of pencil-pushing geeks who don't have a clue what goes on in the real world, and they think we give away the farm. So, but it's this grease that keeps the wheel going. So we try to get as many deals out as far in advance as we can. Like right now, our deal that we have right now is reduced deposit, free upgrades, free onboard, free Wi-Fi, free gratuities, and free premium drink package, which means basically everything's free. You don't have to pay free. And what's different with our drink package and some of the others is you don't pay the gratuities. If it's free, it's free. It's free, right? So, there's all kind of deals out there. Our past passengers, God bless you, keep us in business. They get extra onboard credit. If you leave a deposit, you get an extra onboard credit. If you've ever been in the military and you have a DD-214, we would like to say thank you for your service. You get an onboard credit. If you're a shareholder, you get an onboard credit. All these programs stack on top of each other. There's all kind of deals out there, just depending on when and where you want to go. And over the next 60 days, we, the industry, are going to be looking, to replace business. So there's a lot of deals coming up, And it all starts with talking to ladies and finding something booking a refundable reduced deposit, in some cases as low as $100 refundable deposit, and then you sit back and wait to see what comes up, because that's what a lot of people will do. We're already half sold out for Alaska 2021. There are more hotel rooms on Daytona Beach than the entire state of Alaska. So our lodges in Alaska are already 50% sold out for 2021. People make the reservation, only costs $100, fully refundable. They start twiddling their thumbs, waiting for the best deal.
Thank you very much for all of that. And before we wrap everything up, I just want to say, is there any questions that anybody has, or? Yes.
You somewhat mentioned it. I've always heard if you own stock in any of the cruise lines, it had to be 100 shares. You got X% on anything you ever booked. Is that true or false?
Yes, no, maybe. So if you own 100 shares of Carnival Corp and you sail on a Carnival Corp ship, you will get an onboard credit. And that onboard credit depends on the length of the cruise. On a 7-day cruise, it's $100. You know, so and it goes up to $250 off something longer than 14 days. So Carnival Corp rewards you on any Carnival Corp ship for being a shareholder. And with Princess, it combines with every other promotion that's out there. So we have people come on our ship, bless you, that have 5, 6, 7 promotions all stacked on top of each other. So yes, any Carnival Corp. I don't know about the others, okay, but that's our program.
And another question I've heard is that all travel agencies and cruise lines go against the same database with the same prices. Why is there so much difference in prices between travel agency A, travel agency B, and directly to cruise line?
All right, can I answer? Laurie?
Oh, please.
This is a big item. So here we are the first week of March, and I've already done 45 consumer events this year. Now think about that. Since January 1, I've already done 45 consumer events. And at every single consumer event, I have somebody come up to me and go, Ted, if I book directly with you, can I get a better deal? So the answer to that is no. When we sell something, it's across the board. We sell at MSRP, we don't make exceptions. We do have a direct department. They are allowed 14 departures a month to offer onboard credits. So remember, we are 375 ports call, 7 continents. We only give them 14 total departures around the world to offer onboard credits. So we give travel agents a better rate, a better deal, a better business term than what we sell, because we're not a Caribbean-based company. We are a worldwide company who find the distribution system to work best when you work with a travel professional. We can't man the phones, example right now with the coronavirus and everybody calling, right? So we give travel agents a better deal. We allow them to block group space. We allow them to come to market with lower than standard rates. We allow them to use their imagination. Some will include certain things. So a travel agent can decide what to come to market to, right? There is no one in this country that gets a better rate than another travel agent, all right? There are some exceptions to that on some last minute deals, but generally speaking, Roseborough has the same buying power because they belong to a national conglomerate that a AAA office does, or American Express office. So some companies focus on certain things. Those that focus on Europe and exotic will offer better deals because they're better at it, right? See what I mean? But when it comes to the base thing, as far as we're concerned, right, they sell us cheap and we sell ourselves.
Thank you, Ted.
And another thing is with Roseborough, they're part of travel leaders. So there's a lot of, because travel leaders is a huge group of travel agents, they have exclusive deals on certain dates where there's shipboard credit or other amenities that's exclusive to them that you cannot get through another travel agent.
It's the largest in North America.
Thank you. Yes, John.
A short statement on Princess. A lot of cruise lines offer discounts if you're over 55, if you belong to AARP, or if you're military, you get a certain discount. It's all basically the same. But with Princess, if you have a DDS 214 and you record it with them, or you prove it with them, you get shipboard credits. We went to Hawaii, we have private military stocks, and we booked early. We had a ton of shipboard credits.
Thanks, Dad, I appreciate you bringing that up. And what's good about the program is once you provide that information, it stays on your past passenger for life.
Yeah.
And it stays with you forever. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or? Perfect. Well, thank you. I think, Amanda, did you have any other final thoughts or things from back there that
We
you?
have passengers in Brazil on Holland America's Grand World Voyage.
We do, so yay. So next grand voyage, if they can't get on 2021, if that was
It'll be
still availability,
2022.
make it 2022. January 2022, I'm assuming we're going to
January
have
2022.
that next voyage out. And thank you for all sharing all the wonderful information, for sharing information on the corona situation. We appreciate that. I know we spent a little extra time on that, but it is important. So we do appreciate that. I want to thank Lori, John, and Ted for coming today.